All right. So, good morning and welcome to an interview with two colleagues from Northeast Normal University, Fei Jiang and Bo Feng. And this interview is to explore their use of possibility development theory in their work in adolescent development in China. So, just to introduce myself again, I'm Andrew Babson. I'm co founder and senior research associate with the GPN at Penn GSE. And the big push behind doing this is to get to know researchers from around the world and specifically close partners of the GPN and to understand more about their work, more about the use of the term possibility development, and just to get a broad sense of the uniqueness of different contexts and um, what we will be doing in the future, where things are going with possibility development research. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to introduce Fei Jiang. Fei is professor and chair at Northeast Normal University, and the department that she chairs is called Comparative Studies of Moral and Civic Education. And Northeast Normal is located in Zhongshan, China. And this is, as the name might suggest, in the northeastern part of the country. And Fei is joined by her junior colleague, Bo Feng, who is an associate professor in the same department at Northeast Normal. So, welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you here this morning, our time in the US, and for Fei in the evening in Zhongshan. So, today's conversation is really just about who you are and how you came to be interested in to use possibility development theory, and then tell us a little bit about your work, and then give us an idea of what's next. So let me just start off first of what are your academic backgrounds? What kind of training and what kind of ideas may have led you to this concept of using possibility development? I'll start with you first, Professor Jiang.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And thanks to the initiators and supporters of Global Possibility Network for this honored opportunity. My name is Fei Jiang. I'm a full professor in Center for Ideological and Political Education at Northeast Normal University in China. And plus, I'm also serving as the board member of Association for Moral Education ever since 2019. During the past 15 years, I've been working persistently on youth purpose development and purpose education, which is very closely related to the possibility development concept. By using the concept purpose, we mean a sense of direction in life by aiming to accomplish something which is significant to both self and the world beyond the self. And by the concept of purpose education, we mean fostering noble purpose on not only the content and the reasons of the purpose, but also the noble route towards the achievement of the purpose. And the possibility development concept has brought up a lot of enlightenment on both theories and practices concerning purpose education. And my interest in this research on purpose and purpose education came from my own work experiences. Before working in Center for Ideological and Political Education, I first worked as a student counselor and then an English teacher on linguistics in the same university. I found similar phenomena which aroused my interest and deep thinking. As you might have heard, in China, there's a nationwide college entrance examination, and universities admit students based on their scores in the college entrance exam. In this sense, students admitted to the same university are always at a similar level intellectually. Why do students who go to the same university and study in the same major vary a huge lot at the point of graduation in many ways, including not only their academic behavior and achievements at college, but also their plans about the future and their own life? Some just do not think about those aspects and keep drifting. We were clear that those who do not have good achievements academically were not because they were not as smart as their classmates. And these differences in achievements at college generally would ultimately direct to their dropout in their future lives. I noticed that there were always a certain number of students in every grade who were not interested in learning or building connections with their teachers and classmates. They seem not interested in anything and keep killing time every day by playing computer games or just lying in bed. This phenomenon made me nervous, no matter when I was a student counselor or an English teacher. I kept working hard, especially on this group of students. I tried many means, such as talking to themselves, talking to their subject teachers, or even sometimes talking to their parents. But there were no big difference. Changes may occur, but normally lasted for less than a month. I could not help asking myself why these students do not thrive and keep drifting no matter what their teachers and parents may say to them and how hard their teachers and parents may try. I interviewed many of them and tried to find answers which could explain this big shift at the transition from high school to college. I knew they had worked very hard in high school because my university is among the top 3 normal universities in China. Only top students with very high college entrance exam scores could be admitted. Almost all of them reported high level of motivation in high school and a sense of sudden loss of motivation at the point of entering college. By further analysis, I found that for most of these students, their motivation at high school level were external or instrumental, but not from the inside of themselves, like a strong desire to accomplish something, which has brought a lot of meanings to themselves. So these instrumental motivations disappear fast as soon as they achieve their periodical aims. They knew they need to go to college, maybe for the sake of social stereotype or their parents' face or something else. But they did not have any deep thinking on what's next after going to college. They even don't really know what they are in college for. This is the reason that explained why they keep drifting after admitting to college. Then how to help these students find their aims in life and how college experiences could contribute to the achievement of their aims became the biggest task for me to think about. I went back to global resources on such topics and searched for enlightenment and solutions. I found the researches conducted by Stanford professor William Damon and his team, exploring the positive functions that having a sense of purpose may have on the flourishing of young people. In their researches, Bill Damon also proposed steps that teachers and practitioners may follow to arouse a sense of purpose among youngsters, including ask students to think about what are the most meaningful things to them in life, what kind of person they want to be in the future, followed by next question, how could learning this subject contribute to the achievement of their purpose? In the following classes, teachers may find chances to share their own purposes and how they went on the right trajectory towards achieving their purposes. Teachers may keep asking students whether they are still persistent about their previous mentioned purpose or have changed their purposes and why on a monthly or bi-monthly interval to keep reminding students to strive for their purposes. I was really curious about whether the prescriptions a US professor provided to US youngsters may also have its curative effects among Chinese students. I even did some longitudinal empirical studies among my students with test group and comparative group. I found that with teachers' deliberate, consistent guiding on purpose, student internal motivation improved dramatically comparing to their counterparts. And the most surprising finding was that by such interventions, students not only build up clearer sense of purpose, but also improve their academic outcomes dramatically. The scores of the final exam in the test group was significantly higher than the scores of the comparative group. I was really excited about my findings, and I found a chance and went to Stanford and started to work with Bill Damon and his team in the year 2010 and stayed there for 2 years to research specifically on theories and practices on purpose development and purpose education among different contexts, such as college students, and for different perspectives of purpose, such as civic purpose, professional purpose, and etc. That's about myself.
That's a very impressive list of activities and interests, and this is all wonderful to hear. And the relevance of possibility development to your work is certainly very clear, and that's very helpful for us to know. So thanks very much. I'd like to hand it over now to Dr. Fang. Would you like to also talk about your own academic background?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this video interview. My name is Feng Bo. I'm an associate professor at the Center for Ideological and Political Education of Northeast Normal University in China. My research direction is youth values education and cross-cultural identification. My undergraduate major is software and graduate with a master's degree in public policy management from the National University of Singapore. I am currently working as a postdoc with Professor Mike Nakula of GISE of UPenn. In 2019, I took part in the Possibility Mentoring Project in Philadelphia as a visiting scholar. I am also the translator of one of Dr. Nakula's book, Understanding Youth, Adolescent Development for Educators. In my opinion, to deliver possibility development mentoring in different countries in the world, we must have a set of theoretical concepts and methodological guidance based on our general laws of adolescent psychological development. This is also our experience in China. So we try to strengthen the theoretical research of possibility development with consideration of unique Chinese youth characteristics, which helps build the foundation and pre-prepared for the global possibility network implementation. So this is the reason I translate this book and hope it could be used as a training material for the future mentors, providing them the radical spot and build a solid foundation before they join the mentees to help. That's all. Thank you, Andrew.
That's great. Thank you very much. So, Bo, while we're talking with you about, you mentioned earlier that you are translating. You're in the process of translating, correct? Or you have finished that translation?
Actually, I already finished it, but it's not published now.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a really significant contribution, and I think very I think very impressive. So you, in that work of translation, you've probably learned a lot about Dr. Nakula's work, and so I was just curious, how did you discover this term, possibility development? And maybe you could just elaborate on what other theories and ideas that you've been working with, and maybe talk about how possibility development has fit into those ideas.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm so excited to share some translation experience and discuss the social values of this book and how these link to my research and understanding of the possibility development theory. As we all know, Dr. Nakula has been working in this area since mid-1990s. He and his colleagues studied a federally funded school counseling program, which aimed at preventing high-risk behaviors. After turned into a research model that emphasizes developmental strength and interest. This shift determined it from prevention to invention, from mixing or reducing risks and negative behaviors to building a better future for oneself, and named the modified project IF, Inventing the Future. IF offers a pathway to help young people imagine the life they desire and build the necessary scaffolding to help those vision a reality. So this is therefore the starting point of the theory of possibility development, and also the initial reasons for the book I translated. Although Dr. Nakula explains the essence of possibility development more deeply in he and maybe your last book, Adolescent Psychology in Today's World, but we still could find the epistemological and methodological and practical foundations of the development theory in this book I translated, Understanding Youth. Firstly, at the epistemological level, this book built up his foundation on Erikson's constructive theory, which emphasizes on the role of creating development through the generation of life experience, rather than focusing on the objective description of biology, psychology, or other disciplines in individual development. In this sense, adolescent psychology at its core is the understanding, exploration, creation, and deep experience of possibility. At the same time, I think this book also borrows ideas from Vygotsky's scaffolding concept, which emphasizes that the external growth environment of adolescent also has a great influence on one's possibility flourishing. The external world becomes part of one's internal realities through the translation of support or barriers into individual experience, including perspectives, ideas, and the feeling of what is possible. My belief is both Erikson's constructive theory and Vygotsky's scaffolding concept all contribute to the formation of the fundamental concept of possibility development. In one word, that is the capacity to conceive of internal possibilities in one's life and then actualize them with external support. Secondly, at the methodological level, Understanding Youth incorporates threaded case studies for practical and theoretical information on adolescent development. In the book, we can find many vivid, real, and specific cases. The author describes the environment of life, family, education, and interpersonal relationship in adolescent growth. Then reveals the core psychological problems during teenagers' development. Following some theoretical analysis, this book elaborates with theories of case studies to track the educational method and ethics, which is similar to the possibility development 5 steps method. That is the first, exploring personal interest, and the second, ranking the interest to pursue. The third is planning for action, and the fourth, actual action, and the last, assessment. By following these steps, educators can learn how to support teenagers in their creativity, imagination of themselves and their surroundings, to learn how to better encourage them and even join them in the design process of their future life development, to learn how to help teenagers recognize themselves and achieve their goals by teaching, practice, by words and deeds, by rules and regulations. As a third, I think this book frames possibility development theory, basic research, vision, and direction. On the one hand, it focuses on the relationship between teachers and students. The same as it's in the process of mentoring practice, mentors work with students also through the power of trust and closeness, and use this relationship to encourage students to move in different possible life. Based on the relational teaching, teachers and mentors educate students and mentees in terms of respect, care, collaboration, and a host of life skills necessary to ensure success and personal happiness. On the other hand, it frames the practical basis of possibility development, which is adolescent risk-taking and creativity, and explains the relationship between flow theory and adolescent development. This is also the reason and the motivation why possibility mentoring should and could be carried out so smoothly. Actually, the modern children are not lack of imagination at all. They just need a teacher or mentor who they trust and to help them imagine their own possibilities. In addition, it can help students or mentees build confidence, and using this experience help them to get the status of optimal. The mention above have provided beneficial exploration for the theoretical research and actual practice of possibility development. But I think Dr. Nakula's theory involved gradually rather than instant realization. So by following this evolution of process, we can form a more intuitive understanding of where we have come from, what we are currently doing, and how we should implement them. This book provides readers with a more comprehensive understanding of the theoretical essence and practical value of possibility development. So finally, the Chinese version of this book will add some specific introduction of academic terms and their risks. And some cases were modified to localization in order to meet the Chinese situation. I am pleased to say we have already signed both translation and publishing contracts with Sanlian Publishing Company, which is one of top 4 Chinese publishers. And I truly believe that this book will become a very important resource of adolescent psychology and development for Chinese teachers and students. That's all. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. And I think that that was a really useful, very helpful discussion of Dr. Nakula's work, and also, I think, very exciting news about your work on the book and the translation. I do think that it's interesting for me as an American to understand that the concepts in the book can be applied to contexts such as yours in Cheng Xuan. So I'm going to bring it back now to Professor Jiang. And if you don't mind, I would love for you to elaborate a little bit on your own, let's say, history with this concept of possibility development, and maybe perhaps add a little bit of detail or maybe your own personal spin on some of the ideas that Dr. Feng was discussing with us.
Okay, so during the past decade, we have never stopped searching for international experiences on assisting youngsters to flourish in life, because the major aim and the research focus for our center and for researchers in the center are on the comparative studies of moral education in different perspectives. among all these international experiences, we found Dr. Nakula's research, and it impressed me a huge lot. I believe the possibility mentoring initiated by Dr. Nakula provides educators with enlightenment and guidance on facilitating young people's pro-social development. His 5 steps and all sorts of in and after class notes and summaries help educators to implement this practice step by step. Meanwhile, the mentee's developmental trajectory could be well documented and monitored. We believe possibility development concept has its cross-cultural implications and could be generated to other cultural backgrounds with modification and localization. So when I look back at what I've been doing during the past years, I suddenly understand why Dr. Nakula's and his team's research on possibility development caught my eyes and attracted me so much at the very beginning when I first knew about their researches. Because our researches are very similar in that we are both trying to help young people find their directions in life and also trying to provide them with very practical and achievable steps to go on the appropriate route towards the achievement of their desired directions. And the friendship between myself and Dr. Nakula could be traced back to almost 10 years ago. In the fall of 2013, after I have read about his research, I found the opportunity to visit him at UPenn for academic exchange with 2 other professors from my center. Dr. Nakula impressed us a lot by his beneficent and caring heart to the disadvantaged, which is in accordance with one of the important aspects of my center's mission. Soon after that, I initiated my 1-year academic visit to UPenn with Dr. Nakula and composed the Chinese chapter in Dr. Nakula's book, Adolescent Psychology in Today's World. The reason for me to participate in the writing is that I believe in order to foster purpose or help them find possible and practical aims among youngsters, we have to build up our cognitive basis about realistic conditions of today's youth. Only if we have a clearer understanding about today's youth could we know where we should start from for the educational sake.
So I'd like to now ask a little bit of something about how your university has had some involvement. You've spoken a little bit about it, Professor Jiang, and I think it's interesting to us academics over here about how your work relates to the department and to the university as a whole. And maybe you could speak just briefly about that. And also, I'd like to hand it back over to Dr. Feng as well.
Yeah, first of all, shall I introduce a little bit about the institution we are working in? We are working in the Center for Ideological and Political Education at Northeast Normal University. And the discipline of ideological and political education in Northeast Normal University is one of the 2 key national disciplines in China. The Ideological and Political Education Center of Northeast Normal University is the only disciplinary innovation and research base for moral education to adolescents in China. And we have been undertaking the domestic and foreign scholar exchange high-level project supported by China Scholarship Council. We have a lot of resources for doing research. And the research orientation of our center mainly focuses on youth and adolescent moral development and moral education, and comparative studies of values education across the world. And over the past decade, we have established an international cooperation network with top research institutions, including but not limited to University of Pennsylvania, Harvard University, Stanford University, UC Berkeley, Penn State University, University of British Columbia, Bristol University, Hebrew University of Jerusalem in Israel, University of Sao Paulo in Brazil, Moscow State University in Russia, Tsukuba University in Japan, and National University of Singapore, Association for Moral Education, where I'm a board member, and World Value Survey Association, and etc. And plus, we have been organizing and hosting a series of international conferences on topics related to values and values education on a yearly basis before the pandemic. by which we build up a platform for researchers and practitioners all over the world to exchange ideas and promote mutual understandings on how to help young people flourish in life. We will continue hosting such international academic conferences in upcoming years. And among all our researches, helping youngsters find their possible aims in life and guide them towards the route to flourish, and providing them with possible scaffolds in this process is one of the most important focuses of the research in my center. That's why we highly value Dr. Nakula's research at Penn.
Great. I'd like to ask you, Dr. Fung, how your own, let's say, place in the department, or perhaps any partnerships in the department, do you collaborate with other researchers in your department on your work? Perhaps there are people that you collaborate with outside of your university. Maybe you could speak a little bit more about that.
Actually, my direction of research is the adolescent values education. Before I came to University of Pennsylvania, actually I studied some education method in Singapore, how they educate the students have social values, and then I published my first book about that. And now I focus on how the Chinese culture spread to the whole world and how the influence to the adolescent. So this is why I came here and study and collaboration, some information and knowledge about this. So that's all. Thank you.
Great, thanks. You know, I would like to pick up on something that you just mentioned, Dr. Fung, about context and about maybe a little bit for international, i.e., non-Chinese viewers of this. So, as an aside, we will have a transcript of this interview, and we will also have that translated into Mandarin so that there is a chance for people to follow along in Mandarin. But back to your interesting work in Singapore, and then also you're talking about Chinese context. Could you talk a little bit more about the context of some of your research? I think it's interesting for those of us from outside of China to learn a little bit more about those contexts. And what I mean by context are perhaps history, culture, a little bit more about moral systems, or a little bit more about, let's say, economic mobility. Your thoughts?
Yes, actually, no matter Singapore or United States or Chinese, I think in the modern time, as I have mentioned, that the essence of adolescent possibility development is self-identification. So finding possibility throughout life's growth and striving to realize it with teenagers' self-feeling is the premise of possibility development. Theoretical studies show that some of the biggest challenge facing Chinese teenagers are those associated with globalization and the internet. Chinese teenagers, although benefit from and are influenced by several thousand years of Chinese history, which shows a unique understanding of the meaning of life, creativity, and values. This is fundamental driving force for the ongoing development of Chinese culture and the nation. Nowadays, China's youth share some similar experience and characteristics with young people in other countries like Singapore or United States due to the global connectivity. Almost all of them are confronted with the challenge of globalization. So in current era, culture in some forms is more and more converging. The life sciences are more and more virtualized, and the youth become more and more netizens. These progressive changes affect the development of adolescent self-values and the construction of self-identity. Traditionally, studies of identity formation focus on the factors such as career choice, the social political ideologies, beliefs, value systems, worldviews, and so on. With the expansion of globalization, multicultural has become an inseparable part of adolescent survival and identity formation. Whether you are in an environment of different nation or language, whether you are an international student or immigrant, even if you have been living a familiar condition, you must accept cross-cultural influence. Therefore, adolescents around the world now face both greater risks and more opportunities in their journey to develop a cross-cultural identity. According to possibility development theory, adolescent identity formation centers on how they develop a strict sense of self in the relation to others within their own cultural context. So I think that if forming a multicultural identity, adolescents have to face difficult and unique choice under different culture types and decide their group loyalty to one, to some, or none of these. In other words, young people today are faced with a much more complicated world when they try to make their choice about their values, beliefs, and ideologies. Therefore, Chinese youngsters are similar to others in the world. Globalization is the biggest threat for increasing identity confusions as young people struggle to find a balance between local culture and global cultures. On the one hand, some elements of local culture has lost their original charm. On the other hand, many adolescents find it's difficult to relate it to the global culture because it's sometimes different and even opposite to their local culture. This aligns with John Barry, a cross-cultural psychologist, who said that for many people in the world, globalization is a double-edged sword for their deep-rooted sense of selves. Although globalization provides many information exchange of economic, education, but it also brings some negative influence to people who are not fully integrated. With the process of globalization, few people, however, can avoid the force of becoming multicultural individuals and global citizens. This is not Chinese specific, but I think it's a worldwide issue. Therefore, contextually speaking, and in addition to possibility development concepts discussed earlier, I think it's necessary to further explore the impact of globalization and connectivity on adolescent self-identification. As far as I know, you also are expert in this field and have a very deep insight in the field of intercultural education. So I hope that through you and the Global Possibility Network, we can assist more teenagers from different countries to navigate their developmental timeline when they facing huge challenge and change to realize their life possibilities in the future. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you for that response. And I will just, I would like to echo one of the sentiments that you expressed, which is that this is a challenge for many young people around the world. You could say most,
Yes, yes,
and it's,
yes, yes.
so that's very interesting, I think, because just taking from my work in South Africa, I found, generally speaking, that for a lot of young people that were from a rural area where they had a particular language that they used, and they had those kinship ties, their extended family, not far away, that was something that they planned on holding on to even when they found a job in the big city like Johannesburg or Durban or Cape Town. And so it's interesting to explore those tensions of how much can they manage the tension of holding on to, let's say, their mother tongue, as linguists like to call it. Faye, I'm sure that you understand that concept with your own background, and how they might use English, for example. So that could be an interesting idea to think about of our Chinese youth learning English. How does that perhaps correspond with their adolescent development? There's lots that we could explore here. And thank you so much for introducing that topic of globalization. It's fascinating, and it is something relevant to most of us, really. I would like to, Faye, if you don't mind, I'd like to hand it back over to you. Earlier, you mentioned some research that was interrupted by COVID, and I believe you were talking about middle school aged kids. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, and it'd be interesting again for us to learn a little bit about regional contexts, and perhaps around Changchun area.
Yeah, for that part, which was paused because of the COVID, our targeted participant would be like middle school students. The reason why we chose those age group is that we want to echo Mike's research in the United States, and we want to replicate his method. We were thinking using the similar methodology on the same age group of students might exert the most comparable results. That's why we first want to initiate such practice on middle school students. And we also want to elaborate more on this practice onto college level. We want to do such researches among the first generation college students. And we are still discussing with Mike, who should be the possible mentors, because for those college students, it is harder for them to build up trust among them and the mentors. And for my own research, most of my research, in fact, focus on college level. My research on possibility and purpose could mainly be divided into two related perspectives, the global perspective and the local perspective. For the global perspective, during the past years, my team and I did some researches on cross-cultural comparisons on purpose development and purpose education. I was one of the principal investigators of a 3-year longitudinal international collaboration project on how service learning influences youth purpose around the world, sponsored by the John Templeton Foundation. We specifically focused on college students in study and examined the function that service learning may play on fostering purpose all-roundedly. The nations involved in this research included the United States, Brazil, Finland, Spain, South Korea, and China, 2 countries from the America, 2 from Europe, and 2 from Asia. And we published our research findings in 2 special issues, one with Journal of Education for Teaching and the other with Journal of Moral Education. We have also published individual papers on other domestic and international journals. Plus, we organized a few symposiums in different international conferences, and our symposiums was anonymously elected the best one in one of the Association for Moral Education annual conferences. And for the local perspective, my special interest of research context is on youth of college level. The reason why I'm specifically interested in this age group is because that I believe college is a special transitional period in life to prepare young people to be responsible citizens. I always consider this period of time as the last line of defense before letting them go into society. This period of time is also transitional for young people to build up their understandings of their social roles and social responsibility gradually. Meanwhile, we did examine different demographic groups of college students and specifically look at students' origins. which means whether they come from the city or the countryside, with a special attention on students from the countryside, who are normally from low socioeconomic backgrounds and could not get enough assistance and resources from their family members. We also look at the rank of kids at home. We believe that the level of other-oriented purpose among kids of different rankings at home may be different due to the sequence of birth. We normally divide kids into 4 groups based on their rankings at home: the biggest kid, the middle kids, the youngest kid, and the only child. We specifically examine the differences among the only child and youngsters from multiple children families, with a special attention on the purpose of the only child group. And beyond this specific demographic context, we also examine possible interventions to foster purpose, such as teacher support, school support, service learning, extracurricular activity participation, etc.
For our final set of questions, so Dr. Zhang, you've already given us a little bit of insight into the kind of work that you've been doing and perhaps that you will be doing. Maybe you can talk briefly about what is next and what really excites you about future research in this area of possibility development. And then Dr. Fung, I'd like to wrap up with your take on the same question. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andrew. For my research team, I have 6 PhD candidates and 6 master students working with me currently. And we have just initiated a new research plan on youth purpose in the post-pandemic era. As we all know, the pandemic has brought a lot of changes to people's lives and their choices on living styles. The pandemic may end sooner or later, but such experiences would definitely add new elements in the cultural gene of the society, so that its impact on people's values would last and influences the next generations as cultural heritage. As we could witness and sense, there are dramatic changes on people's values during the pandemic. Many people started to reconsider how a human being existence in nature, which will directly influence people's understandings of the meanings of their lives. And new changes have already shown up in many aspects of young people's choices. For example, new college graduates are more hesitant to start up their own business. Instead, they exhibit higher preference to work for others, because they may think it is more challenging and costly to start up their own business in an era when there is much more uncertainty in society as a universal phenomenon. In a world where people are facing dramatic changes and a lot of uncertainty, to arouse entrepreneurship and innovation would definitely be much harder than the time before the pandemic. And besides, in their choice of place where they want to work and settle down, more and more college students choose to go back to their hometown or to the places where their families stay. They believe that family members staying together and supporting each other would give them more courage and sense of being while facing hardships. So our next step for the upcoming at least 5 years is to focus on figuring out how Chinese youth purpose in the post-pandemic era would be like, and compare these data to the data on youth purpose that we collected before the pandemic. The reason for doing this is that we want to find out what elements in purpose have changed because of the dramatic changes, and what have remained unchanged in people's purpose. We desire to further analyze the reasons and concerns which would explain these changes and fixedness. And this could help us build up the epistemological foundation for us to keep pace with the times and form a clearer understanding of today's youth, so that we could propose more practical and accurate intervention methods on youth purpose and youth possibility in upcoming decade. Thank you very much.
Very nice. That's quite an ambitious platform for research. Boy, it sounds fantastic. I would look forward to reading that. Absolutely. I would love to know more about those issues in the context that you've outlined. Dr. Fung, I'd like to hand it back over to you if you don't mind. And, there was a word that Dr. Zhang mentioned in her response just then, epistemology. So perhaps, I'm not sure, I'm making an assumption here, but maybe your work elaborates that a little bit, or perhaps you're interested in similar ideas. You have some thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think the direction of my current and future research will focus on internet influence on adolescent self-identity and development.
Okay.
Because networking is an important driver of globalization, especially the role of social media plays in constructing values and life ideals. So I think this area I will be focused on in the future. According to the survey data, Chinese youth internet users has reached 183 million, which take up 94%. On average, 11% children spend more than 2 hours online on weekdays, and 12% spend more than 5 hours during holidays. Of this, more than 50% of the time is spent on the social networking website. So today's teenagers are not only getting information and communicating with families, friends, and other classmates, but also building social relationship and collaborations in the virtual space on internet platforms. So their values and life ideals are not only constructed in traditional textbook and classroom or other environments of themselves, but more from social media interactions. So at the same time, teens are prefer to hide their true sides in the real and the physical world and choose make their voice from deep heart heard on social media. The people they trust are not only parents and teachers, but sometimes it's the netizens who they never met. Therefore, under the framework of possibility development theory, winning the heart and mind of teenagers with practical actions, we cannot completely follow a traditional pathway. We should also try to join them in the online world where they reside more and more these days. In addition, another very important issue is that the emergence of social media has changed the way people record their lives. Some teenagers are exposing themselves every minute or even every second to the public. According to the survey data, British parents post on average nearly 200 photographs of their children online each year. Growing up online may impede our ability to add memories, call what's needed to be called, and move on. The potential danger is no longer childhood disappearance, but rather the possibility of a changeless childhood. According to possibility development theory, everyone benefits from experimentation in adolescence. During that time, we exist in what the Eriksons called a period of moratorium, a stage in which we hover between the moral learned by the child and the ethics learned by the adult. In this period, adolescents are permitted to take risks without fear any consequence, in hopes that doing so will clarify a true self, will clarify the personal sense of what gives life meaning. But the internet interrupts the privacy of this era. We cannot delete any small mistakes. We cannot change the type of life. We cannot modify the path of growing up. We have to expose all the time of childhood and turn some temporary errors into lasting record. So in the long run, the result is colleagues and the employers now look at the social media account for the evidence of one's character. And the friends, the teachers, parents will also judge the good and the bad of teenagers through the social media. So what would be like to live under internet threat? What are the resulting when a whole generation never gets a chance to experiment freely or remake themselves? Therefore, I understand that the social media in the internet age has come a tool for our participation in development of adolescents. And it's also a barrier to our experimentation. So my current and future research interest will focus on what values are communicated on social media and how they affect adolescent development. That's all. Thank you, Andrew.
Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up for today, but I have to say, I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I think we could probably continue talking for even longer. Uh, and as a multilingual person myself, I just have to say that sometimes I'm just in awe of people who can elaborate and illustrate and explain very complicated ideas in very plain language, in a language that they have had to learn in school, such as you. I think it's very impressive, and I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot from both of you today, and it's just very nice. I hope that we can maybe even do this again in a different context in one of our online conferences and symposia. So we had a symposium post CIES, which is the Comparative International Education Society Conference. We recently had a conference that brought together people from all over the place, and it was a nice, just general conversation that we were able to have, and it was more casual, and it was really nice and very social. So perhaps we can talk more in that vein. But we look forward to working with you more at the GPN and collaborating more. And I think it's really exciting to think about what might lie next. And I know I speak for myself, but I'm sure I also speak for Mike that you are doing very important work in this area, and you are some of the leaders in the world on doing possibility development and research. That includes empirical work, but also theory development too. So I think we can be partners in that as well. So again, I'd just like to thank you both for this wonderful chat that we've had today, and look forward to talking with you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Andrew, for
Andrew.
this. Yeah, thank you.
All the best.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.